It's shows like today that were the reason behind the creation of the Media Row podcast. Not only do we have our interview with Coach Joe Woodley as the Drake football team looks to win their third straight PFL game this Saturday at noon in Des Moines against Davidson, but we said you were going to blink and college basketball season was going to be here. On Monday, I went out to the Knapp Center, interviewed Coach Henderson and a handful of players for the Drake Men's Basketball Media Days, and we are going to do a deep dive into that as well. But welcome, everyone, to the Media Row podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Miller. A huge thank you to our sponsor in Kelly's Little Nipper. Make sure to get out there to 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. And when you do, make sure to use that keyword in Woodley. First drink is on the house. No better deal in the state. And secondly, make sure to let them know that Media Row sent you. So, a lot to get to in today's show. Again, if you are not following us on social media, you missed out a lot on Monday, as we are going to share a few of the interviews with Coach Henderson and a select few players from Media Day on Monday. But if you want to see everything that we did on Monday, you need to go follow us at Media Row Pod on Twitter. Follow us all over social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever you get your podcasts as well. Like, subscribe, comment, and then, of course, subscribe on the YouTube channel as well, because that's where you can see everything. We have a few select interviews I want to talk about in today's show, but if you want to see everything we did on Media Day, you need to go to the social media page at Media Row Pod on Twitter. But before we dive in to Media Day, we need to get to our interview. As always on Wednesdays, our get-together with head coach Joe Woodley as the Drake football team looks to win their third straight league game this season at home at noon against Davidson. Without further ado, here's head coach Joe Woodley joining us here on the Media Row podcast. As always, thank you so much, Coach Woodley, for coming on. I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this. And first off, how was the trip to San Diego? I mean, this was kind of the first big road trip for this team and your staff.
Yeah, it was certainly our first flight, and from where I came from, the only time you earned a flight was if you made it to the national championship game. So the good news is had a little bit of experience there, and not that long ago, flying out of the same hangar or whatever, and was familiar with all the security, and of course our guys are too. Or at least the guys that have been in the program, so all that was good, and so there wasn't much going on there, and it was pretty well organized by AJ Vasquez, Gabby Damiano, who helps with our travel, and Jay Brummel. I couldn't have asked for a better. I mean, it was just first class all the way, and stayed at a really good spot out there, and that certainly helped. And of course, it's paradise for the most part out in San Diego. It was my first time, and I've always heard that about San Diego. Now, wasn't a sightseeing tour, or we weren't at the beach or anything like that, but certainly enjoyed the nice weather, even though it's been pretty unseasonably warm here. But yeah, all in all, from that side of things, very very successful trip, and of course with the win on top of it, certainly didn't hurt matters of my mood. That's for sure.
Made the palm trees look a little better, made that sun feel a little better. I
Yep.
want you to take us through kind of that final drive for Drake leading up to the game-winning field goal, because as a fan of just football, when you see those thrillers, those back and forth battles, when you're watching them on TV, I've always sat there and been like, I wonder what it's like to have the headset on as you're trying to navigate this game-winning drive.
Yeah, I just, at the end of the day, you just wanted to put yourself in a position to at least have an attempt at a field goal. We had plenty of time. We had all of our timeouts. And they did us a favor. They kicked one out of bounds, and we get the ball at the 35, and I felt confident enough that we could make enough plays, and just to get ourselves in a position to attempt a field goal. Now, 55 yards was not ideal. I was hoping to get somewhere, around the 30-yard line. But we had conversations throughout the day and really kind of leading up to that game, or do we need a separate long field goal kicker because Harry's been pretty consistent, 42 yards and in somewhere in that neighborhood, and just wasn't real positive of his leg strength if you go get much past 50 yards, and he'd been telling us he's feeling really good, and we actually attempted some longer ones out in practice about a week ago, and kickers are finicky, so you can't do it all the time. You got to save their leg a little bit, and really it was kind of there was a handful of conversations that just were kind of ironic and leading up to that. I think probably one of the bigger things, I usually when we win the toss, I'm usually a guy that takes the football. I just again, I've done that most of my career. I like to start the game fast, and so you're usually at halftime. You're stuck with, which way do you want to kick, and in football, there's kind of been a philosophy or a formula, so to speak, that's been floated around for years. I think Bill Parcells coined it the middle eight. If you win the middle 8 minutes of the game, you're usually going to have a good shot to put yourself in position to win. So always taking the win for the most part in the third quarter. And this time I've done it one other time in my career where I didn't take the win in the third quarter, and it was actually against Harry when he was at Benedictine back in
Really?
gosh, I think it was 20. I want to say 2021 or 2022. Could be off on one of the. I think it was 2022. It doesn't matter. Harry actually went down and kicked at the time what we thought was the game-winning field goal for Benedictine, and then we get the ball back, and like I said, this was the one other time I've taken the wind or didn't take the wind in kind of a close game, just because I thought that's how the flow was feeling. It was whoever was going to have it last, and you wanted to have that little extra push if you needed to attempt a longer field goal. And that year, our kid made I want to say it was a 52-yarder to beat them right at the horn.
Crazy.
Yeah, and then this time around, that was my thought process. I didn't love that I felt like I needed to do it, but I did it. But I was confident. Our offense was running the football well, so I felt like we could get through the third quarter. And I think it was 0-0 through the third. Then we kicked a field goal right away in the fourth. So there was really no points exchanged in the third quarter. So I felt like that was a win, and the win wasn't really substantial. It didn't really feel like it so much down on the field because Harry came up to us in pregame and said, "Yeah, you don't really feel it down here, but once you get it up in the air, that win's really affecting things a little bit." And then at halftime, Justin, I don't know if you've ever been to San Diego's football stadium.
No, I haven't.
It's really neat, but your locker room, it's like really it's like down in a valley or whatever you want to call it. So there's a real steep, I mean, I had to almost stop and catch my breath to to get up that hill. And Harry came and grabbed me right before we were getting ready to go up, and he said, "Hey, coach, do you care if I stay down here just to stay warm and work on some things and not go up to the locker room?" I said, "Yeah, that's fine." And my head was so not on a game.
Yeah, you
What
weren't thinking 55 yarders.
I was thinking about the double pass we gave up for 73 yards. I'm like, hey, just get away from me. But but those are the little things that I remember, of how much that kid was locked in, and of course, again, I don't want to say any games any more special for anyone, but I'm sure there was a little bit there with him, and he's from San Diego. He had a lot of family and friends there, and he wanted to put his best foot forward, and really a little bit that gets lost in the shuffle here, not to kind of put a damper on things, but we missed an extra point 2 minutes earlier. Just some operation a little bit there, and don't want to put that on Harry too much. But my confidence level wasn't real high after a missed PAT that really, you can't say would have sealed the game, but now San Diego would have had to go down and score a touchdown to beat us, and I really liked our chances of being able to stop them from that. So I didn't have now again. He's been in those moments. I know he kicked a game winner a year ago against another playoff team. Or I think it was a game. Doesn't matter. He's been in those moments. I knew it wasn't going to be too big for him. I thought it might be too long, but I said, "What the hell? This is where we're at." And I didn't even watch it, Justin. I had my hands on my knees and my head down, and I was just waiting for the reaction behind me. And yeah, it didn't. I mean, it felt like forever, But I saw some people starting to creep behind me, like, "Oh my gosh, that might be in." And then, of course, chaos ensued, and what a way to finish a really hard fought football game. And quite honestly, didn't think it needed to come down to that. But at the same time, you still got to give credit to San Diego. I mean, what a talented, really good football team, and they have had a gauntlet of a schedule to this point. I think they have their first bye week this week, and I mean they've played Cal Poly, who's a really good FCS. They played Montana State. They flew out to Princeton. They flew out to Marist. I mean, I felt like the flight from Iowa to San Diego was long. They've flown cross country twice now. So, and then and oh, by the way, they've played St. Thomas, another one of the best teams
Yeah.
in the league.
Yeah.
So I felt like that was a really, really good win for us. And quite honestly, it told me a lot. I didn't know how well I knew our team yet, just because the Upper Iowa game, I just didn't know who they were at the time. Obviously, they've turned out to be a pretty good team. And then, of course, you go play the Dakotas, and they're just flat out really good. Yeah, we were fairly competitive. Um, and then we come home and play Valpo, who's kind of been struggling a little bit, and take care of business there. So I just felt like this was really the first team, that like, okay, this is a really good football team, but a team we feel we can be competitive with. We can beat them. It's been done. And in the manner we did it, the toughness, we were down. Just guys, their attitudes, everything was it was just real positive. And like I said, I just feel like I learned a lot about this football team, and it told me we can be pretty special if we continue to grind and play with some grit like we did in that game. I think we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, you always hear that cliche of like those championship level teams, they can win those back and forth in a way ugly physical battles on the road, and your team came out on top. So just what does that mean for this team moving forward to be able to finally see, like you said, kind of your first true test of, okay, now we're starting to really learn about this team and this roster and what kind of players you have.
Yeah, yeah. I just still getting a little bit of a feel for this league, but I got to believe it's about what it's going to be like almost every week. At least with some of those teams that are towards the top, which is where we strive to be. You're going to be in some real close ball games, and how you're going to execute in those tough moments. And I just felt like we won a lot of those real critical moments. Now we didn't win them all, but we won enough of them, and we won the right ones. And one that really comes to mind is we had about, I want to say, three or four 4th-and-1 opportunities, and a couple, one for sure that I don't want to say I regretted, but it kind of stuck with me going into halftime. I mean, it was 4th and inches, but we were on our own 40-yard line. There was I can't remember how much time was left, not a ton, but I felt like if we get it, maybe we can go get some points here before the half. But if we don't, then all of a sudden they can go down because they got a really good field goal kicker. They can go down and make it a 2-possession game, and that's the defensive side in me. I just went with that judgment, and I'm glad I did now. Of course, now it still could have went the other way too, but then there was maybe two other ones. We had a 4th-and-2, we had a 4th-and-1 near midfield, and I just decided against it. Kept punting it, trying to win that field position. But then we were kind of put to really to a decision there down the stretch, and which led to our first touchdown. We went forward on 4th and about 1.5. It was a little longer than I would hoped, but we had Luke Woodson in the game. that kid has just made so many damn tough plays. Again, I can't speak to the what he's done prior to this year, but he's made so many tough plays, tough short yardage plays for us this year, and of course he had a huge run in the first half to put us up 7-6, broke two tackles. He played his best football game of the year, and it's really when the most lights were on. Is kind of how I refer it to, and we handed it to Woody on the 4th and 1, and he bounces it outside and goes and gets us 6 yards. Hit a big pass play the next play, and then Logan runs in from 5 yards out. Just that was probably one of the bigger turning points in the game. When Woody did that, and yeah, just so happy for him because he's played a decent amount, but maybe not quite as much as he would like. But you would never know it. He doesn't complain about it. He's the biggest cheerleader on the sideline. There's nobody more locked into the game. He's coming up to I think he came up to my brother Andy and when San Diego had the ball, because I was planning to, we did call a timeout when they had the ball down there with a minute, whatever, 20 left, and we didn't end up having to use the timeout because there was a penalty on them, so we got the timeout back. But Woody he came up and mentioned something to my brother like, "Hey, we're going to use timeouts, right?" And I think my brother Andy said something to the effect of, "Hey, Woody, this isn't our first rodeo." So, but
Could
it
you
just
see
tells
him
me,
becoming a player coach, or do you see
oh,
him putting on the headset in the future?
yeah, he's too smart for that though. He's going to be. I don't know what he's going to do in this world, but he's going to do something probably a little bigger than that. But hell yes, I think he'd be great at it. There's no doubt about it. And shoot, I'd love to have Woody. He's just again he's just into it. Again, just kind of one of those unsung heroes. You're going to look at a stat sheet, and of course Saturday's stats were pretty good, but he just does so many other things that kind of go unnoticed. Not by us coaches by any means, but maybe a casual fan may just not recognize how important he is. And he's a captain. He's one of four captains on this team, and it was pretty overwhelming with the votes. And I think it just speaks to the character of him. And he was one of the first guys that I had that I reached out to when I got the job, just because of people that were in the program. They gave me a handful of names, and him and like Sean Allison were two of the first names you'd hear. Sean's kind of that vocal voice on the defensive side, and Woody is certainly over on the offensive side. So just couldn't be more happy for him. He had a moment, a handful of moments in that game, and he made the most of them. So pretty neat deal.
I felt like this game against San Diego really showcased the theme and the identity of this Drake team because I felt like with the missed PAT and then Harry comes down and kicks the game winning 55-yard field goal. This team all season long has gotten hit and gotten right back up. And also, this team just continues to take advantage of opportunities.
I do think there's an element of a blue collar mentality on this football team because, and I told our guys when we get off the bus or whatever, and if us and San Diego got off the bus at the same time, I don't know that anybody's picking the Drake Bulldogs, just by physically looking at both teams, and that's no knock on our guys, but man, San Diego has some, they have some length and so some really good looking athletes. But what I know our guys have is that they've got a competitive spirit about them, and it shows up quite a bit, not just in the games, but out at practice. And our practices are pretty spirited, and it's because of guys like that I had just mentioned, and I think that starts to rub off on everybody, and I think we've got a really competitive coaching staff as well, and I just think that creates an environment that hey, we're going to keep coming, we're going to keep coming after you, and that's what we did. It would have been easy when they hit the double pass to go up 13-7. And our offense probably didn't play their best. They didn't play bad, but we just didn't play our best game. The one thing we did do is we didn't turn it over, though. And that's been I don't want to say it's been a huge issue for us, but we've turned it over a little bit, in every game. And coming into this game, it was let's value the football. Let's make good decisions. I can't say we did that, but on the stat sheet we didn't turn it over, and so they did enough. They were competitive enough. They made the tough plays when we absolutely needed them to. And again, we all day defensively, I thought we answered the call. We constantly kept it within one possession, got a bunch of stops when we needed them. Field position was not in our favor for a good portion of that first half. We kind of got that thing flipped on its head and leveled it off by the end of the game. But yeah, Justin, I think that's probably a good way to put it. It's just kind of a workman-like team. We may not be the prettiest, but we're going to go out and fight, and that's certainly what we did Saturday. And but like I told our guys, like, hey, congratulations, hell of a freaking win. But this is win number two in the league. This thing's a marathon. We've got to come back and do it again here against Davidson this week.
And then when you look at the past three games, I feel like this team just continues to really improve on some major, not concerns, but some major areas on both sides of the ball that needed to kind of get showcased. We talked about the running game all last week of how it has its sparks, but just hadn't been consistent. And then you go out there against the second best rushing defense in the league and really get to showcase that. And just what does that show for your team of their ability to just continue to grow? It's all a coach can really ask for.
Yeah, I think they certainly answer the call, and you bring up the rushing the rushing stuff and or running the football, and sometimes us coaches we get in our own way, and just maybe we look into either a statistic or what we think we see on film a little too much, as opposed to just going out there and trusting your guys. And I think we got to that point in that game where, hey, let's all take a deep breath. Let's just go back to the things we were doing in fall camp and spring ball, and really on one of our more explosive, our best drives of the day, we didn't end up scoring on it. Now that's up for debate whether Taj's foot was in bounds or not, but we were backed up on the minus whatever it was, -3 yards, and we ran the ball like five straight times. Nick Herman took all five of them and got us, up past the opposing team's 45-yard line. It was just boom, 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 and we were running tempo. We weren't letting them catch their breath, and it was just our O-line kind of imposing their will, and it really flipped the field, because if you go 3-and-out down there when you're backed up like that, that's about a death sentence. You're giving up some kind of points, and we didn't allow it to happen because of how we handled that drive. So yeah, I think that they answered the call, because we didn't run it great versus Valpo. I think the stats may have ended up looking okay, but we didn't really efficiently, effectively do what we wanted to do in that game. And we had a lot of respect for San Diego's front and the way their safeties kind of run down and support the run game. And but we just got to a point where we ran it right at them, and had the confidence in our guys to do it, and we did. And I think it told us as coaches, like, hey, maybe we can continue to build off of this, and but just kind of like you said, Justin, I think they answered that call, and we challenged them to do that. And of course our defense, they were, we weren't the best tackling team during those Dakota games, and sometimes the opponent has a little bit to do with that. But we've drastically improved that the last 2 weeks. Just not letting guys get extra yardage after that first contact. And there's always moments of it that it's football, and but I think we were much better with that. Explosive plays, we were much better. We've been much better with that the last 2 weeks, when it was maybe a little bit of an issue prior to that. So yeah, they're certainly paying attention, and but you can't forget about it. If you improve it one week, you got to store all that info, and at the end of the day, it's really just being locked in, and on every play, and knowing how important your role is, because everything matters, every play matters. As we saw in that how that game unfolded, it just does, and it shows up in dangest ways. And like I said, I just feel like we won those tough, critical plays when they needed to be won, and that was the difference.
And then last week we also talked about the discipline of your team. Drake won the least penalized teams in the PFL, and that seemed to be a huge advantage on Saturday because Drake, I have down here only 5 penalties. San Diego 8 penalties for 60 yards. Again, just what is the the pride that you have as a head coach to see your team again with such a turnover on your staff and with the players to be able to have this consistency with the discipline of the team.
Yeah, well, I would love to say that was great discipline, Justin, but one of the penalties was I will take the penalty for it because it was a delay game, which we were just doing it to punt it away anyway. Um, but two of them we were offsides, so that's not very good discipline. On both of them were fourth downs that were extremely big. Now they didn't lead to any points, thank goodness, because that would have been devastating. And then I think we had a false start. So like I said, that still needs to improve. But yeah, as far as an overall number, yeah, it's good. But I can live with some of the more aggressive penalties, but the ones because in theory we shouldn't have had any, right? You're offsides twice
Yeah.
and you start once, and I take one for delay a game. So, but we're close. I think again it's one of the areas I talk about with the team every Sunday night after a game, and there's four things we focus on, and one of those is penalties and not beating ourselves, and we still got to improve there. Like I said, I can deal with maybe a hold, even though I swear holding is just optional nowadays. Like just depends on what kind of mood the officials are in. Because holy cow, I tell you, Tristan Anderson's kind of a magnet for it, and it just refuses to ever happen. But that's football. I mean, it just is. But those ones you can maybe live with, or a DPI, or things like that. And but yeah, penalties are. Yeah, they're a cornerstone of a successful discipline program, being low penalized and trying to play the game as clean as you can. And it's just something I think we should take great pride in, and hopefully we'll continue to get to that point.
It wouldn't be a Wednesday conversation with you, coach, if we didn't talk quarterbacks. I feel like it's been a topic every time we chat. But this one is more of a positive note with just the talent that you have at that position. You've played both the true freshman Inagawa and in Spellman, who continues to get healthier. But now, as a coach, how do you balance out their reps? Because we've seen around the nation teams try to do that two quarterback set, and sometimes it becomes way too obvious what one will do outside of the other. How do you balance that out to make sure defenses don't get comfortable when they see a certain quarterback out there for Drake?
Yeah, I think that's what might maybe make us a little more unique. I think both of our guys are very capable of handling pretty much everything in our playbook for what we want to do. So I think that makes us fairly unique. I do think it's okay to just have a change up or a curveball because one, maybe does something a little bit differently than the other, or maybe one likes these certain things better than the other one might. Again, I just think a natural changeup is never bad, and I think I mentioned it a week ago. It's not. I know it's not like a defensive lineman but I don't know where there has to be a rule where just one guy has to play at that position. I think it can be an advantage. I get what you're saying though. Much like Davidson, they have a kid that comes in and all he does is run it. But
Yeah.
he's listed as a wide receiver, and I think he was an option quarterback in their old offense. So I think that's much different than what we are because I think Chase and Logan can excuse me both do the same types of things, and we'll continue to probably progress that moving forward, and but both of them did a lot of positive things in the game yesterday, and I think we'll continue to see that moving forward.
And then to finish up today, just what have you seen from Davidson and their team? Very similar to Valpo, just finding themselves kind of struggling at the early part of the season. But now it's on the coaches and the players to not necessarily look at that as an easy win. And after an emotional win against San Diego, just making sure that you get back on the field at home and compete like every game's a championship.
Yeah, that's the clear message, and I talked about that in our meeting the other night. I just said, hey, and we won a huge game, but we've got to move on. But I think our meeting our meeting started at 5:45. I said, "Hey, you can enjoy this for a few more hours, but once we get into Monday, we're on to Davidson. We're getting prepared for them, and it's the most important game in the world because it is. And believe me, that team, this Davidson team, they are hungry for success, and they played a challenging schedule. Much like San Diego. Davidson has played Tennessee Tech, who's gosh, I think they're ranked fifth or whatever they are. Elon traditionally has been a pretty good program. They had to play them. They played Georgetown, again, another scholarship program who I was awfully impressed with watching the tape on them. Um, they played St. Thomas in our league, who's a really good program.
Yeah.
They had to go down to Stetson, another team that was starving for a win. So you're playing some teams, and that are pretty darn hungry to find a way to win a ball game. And I think a couple things are at play, at least when I see it, and just kind of reading up on Davidson. Number one, offensively, well, maybe a few things. They got a new coaching staff, just like us, and I can relate to what set of issues that can bring. And so with that new coaching staff, they brought in an entirely new offensive system. In the past, they were an option attack, which is a unique uh, offense, if you will, and you have unique people at certain positions. Namely, the offensive line. You're usually you're pairing it up with smaller, agile offensive linemen. I think they're still continuing to work through that with their personnel on the offensive line, even though I think they've got a couple kids on that O line that are really good. I think the other kids were part of the old system. Doesn't make them not capable football players. It's just they're not maybe used to what this style of offense is doing. So I think that's at play. And now I do think they got a lot of really good skill players on the offensive side. I think the quarterback's a really good player. Couple good running backs. I mentioned one of their kids that kind of does some wildcat stuff for him. He was a quarterback a year ago in the option stuff. He's a pretty dynamic player. They got a really good wide receiver. Probably near the top of anybody we'll see this year, I think. So offensively, they've actually points wise, I'm not sure where they're at, but I do think they move the ball at times, and I think there's been a number of times they maybe just shot themselves in the foot when they're on the doorstep of scoring or whatever. Um, so I've actually been pretty impressed with their outfit on offense. Defensively, they're just young. They're youthful, and but by now, they're playing their. I think this is their seventh game, so they're getting older each week too, and they're learning from things. And I just again, believe me, they're. You can look at records all you want, especially in this league with the in this league with what you have to do in the non-conference. Those records are kind of they're certainly not irrelevant, but
Can be
it's
deceiving.
yeah. There you go, deceiving. That's why you went to Drake, Justin, right?
Well, I went to DMAC for 2 years. I
But
wasn't I wasn't a 4 year Drake guy. Wasn't
uh,
smart enough.
but I just see a team that's they're going to come up here hungry, and and the way I look at it, we should be hungry because we didn't play our best football game. I still think that one's out there for us to do, and believe me, you play a physical 60-minute game like we just played out on the West Coast with time zones and all that stuff. We're mentally, physically, we're going to get challenged this week in practice, and guys got bumps and bruises. Can we fight through it? Is everybody gonna be available? That's what those are the things that everybody's dealing with. And we're not. unique to this. Everybody in the country at this point in the year, you're relying on a lot of depth, and and hopefully those guys are ready to answer the call when you call their name. And I saw a little bit of that, in our game Saturday, some guys that because we had guys go down, and it just happens in games, and other guys that haven't played that much have had to go in, and I think of a guy like Tom Shefty for us, a kid that's maybe played a decent amount here in the past. He gets thrown into action in a big time atmosphere game, and first play he goes in there, he makes a TFL. And he's gosh, is Tom a fifth year or a fourth year? He's going to be mad at me that I don't know that, but he's an older guy, and a guy that just you talk about blue collar, hard hat, lunch pail guy every day, just out there ready to go to work. And his opportunity came, and he went out there and played a lot of good snaps for us Saturday. So that's the type of response we need from everybody in this program, because and again, injuries happen, and you've got to be ready. Whether it's an injury or what have you, that next man in, that is not a cliche. It's a reality, especially when you're going into our sixth game of the year, and Davidson's in their seventh. So your depth's really going to show up at this point in the season, and hopefully we prepared our guys well enough to go out there and not have too much of a drop off if we are put in those situations.
A huge thank you to Joe Woodley for coming on the show. Always appreciate his time, not only on Wednesdays when he comes on the show to do a deep preview of the weekend's match, but also on Saturday when we will chat after the game. You can always catch our post-game interviews on Twitter at MediaRowPod. Always appreciate Joe Woodley and everyone that has helped set this up throughout the season. But now let's dive into Monday's Media Day. At the Knapp Center, the Drake Bulldogs, second straight year, brand new head coach, a brand new roster. They lost 99.4% of their playing minutes from a season ago, and yet there's still a lot of optimism in that building and in this program. But before we dive too deep into Media Day, I want to play the opening statement here from Coach Henderson, first-year head coach at Drake University.
Our team, it's a little awkward, not hearing sneakers and balls bouncing off the rim and guys communicating when we're in this practice facility. But it's been a joy to coach our young men. They came in early June, and we got after it right away, and we built. We certainly started to build that chemistry that is all so important for every team out there, and the love and the care that our guys have continued to show for each other is something that I think will be the best thing that we see all year about our team, and I'm so proud of them for that. Because obviously you guys know the deal. We've got a lot of transfers, some young guys, some guys with experience, but they're coming from a lot of different places. And to have that connectivity is so important for a team's success, and they know that, and they show that every day. I love the work that we put in this summer. We certainly worked on offense, we worked on defense, our philosophy, and tried to get connected on the floor, but off the floor is just as important. So that was fun, and then it grew into this fall when we got back to the start of the semester, and it's just continued to grow. We had the first opportunity to play against another team this past weekend when we went down to Wichita State, and I'll tell you what, you have to be careful, right? You don't want to read too much into any of that, especially those early season scrimmages, but the amount of competitive spirit, the connectivity that we showed, how we shared the basketball, there are some things that we sure are excited about, and it will be here before you know it. We'll be playing games, and we got plenty to work on, and I can't wait to watch this team continue to grow throughout the years.
And throughout the entire media day, interviews with Coach Henderson and from the players too, two words you heard pretty consistently were connectivity and communication. Now, you've heard Coach Henderson multiple times mention how he wants this team to be one of, if not the best defending team in the Valley. And the way they do that is with connectivity and communication, as Coach Henderson says. So I started off Media Day with the question of, early on you're still learning this roster. You might even be still learning players' names. But how has he seen this team grow in those two fields of connectivity and communication, both on and off the floor? Here's Coach Henderson's response.
When you bring in guys from as many places as we brought them in from, building those connections, right, on the floor and off is so important. And really, what we talk about is the best way to do that is to communicate with each other, right? And whether it's talking, whether it's a handshake, whether it's a pat on the back, that's all forms of communication, right? And for us, we've really tried to focus on the positive communication, because everybody in this room makes mistakes, right? Including our players. And more times than not, y'all know when you do, and they do too. And so you don't necessarily need to tear them down even farther, but to celebrate them and say, hey, let's get better the next time. And that's the type of communication that we're talking about, right? And that just helps build that connection between them. And at the end of the day, that's going to determine our success probably more than anything else.
And I'll say this about the team. You walk into that building, the first thing that stood out before anything else is the size. We have heard Henderson talk time and time again of just he loves the size of his team. And they have 3 guys, 6'10" or taller, which is a huge step up. If you talk to any Drake fan that's been a fan for the last 5 to 10 years in Des Moines, you know that the biggest issue this team has had consistently is just size. And you look at last year's team, Cam Mannion, tallest player that played true minutes at 6'8", maybe 6'9" on a good day. And you saw how that translated in that second round loss to Texas Tech, where Texas Tech completely obliterated the Bulldogs in the paint in that second round loss. But then you look at the DeVries years, you had Darnell Brody, who was about 6'10", Nate Ferguson, but came off the bench kind of not consistently. So it was mostly Darnell Brody at the 6'10". And then you have Liam, who was at 6'10". Other than that, this team has always been small, has always played small ball. And then you go up against teams like Bradley, and you may be able to take them down. You know, Drake won last year in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament for the 3rd straight year, so it's working. But then to take that extra step, you saw what happened against teams like Texas Tech. And I think this year you walk into that building and you see that size right away. That is the number one thing that I saw with this Drake men's basketball team on Media Day. But there's a lot on the shoulders of Coach Hendo and this roster. Now, a year ago, with DeVries, Tucker DeVries as well leaving with his father, and all the roster changes and seniors leaving and transfers, you bring in McCollum, you bring in these D2 guys. For the most part, there wasn't a lot of expectations. A lot of people did not see the championship season and a first-round victory against Missouri in the NCAA tournament coming at all. Now, they have a full roster turnover, a brand new head coach, and I think a lot of fans are going to sit there and go, we've seen Drake win championships when needing to rebuild an entire roster and staff before. Why not again? So there's a lot of pressure on Coach Hendo, and he spoke to those championship expectations here in Des Moines and just how it drove him to take this job in the first place at Drake.
Wouldn't have came here if thought so much of this opportunity if that wasn't the expectations, right? That's something that really intrigued me about this place. The care and the energy and the enthusiasm for Drake basketball and the support is at an all-time high. And that's something that I didn't want to shy away from, to be honest with you. And I don't really look at it as, expectations. We're going to be the very, very best team that we can be. And that's, and what the results are, they're going to be what they are. Do we want to win every time we step on the floor? Sure. And I'll tell you this, though, we believe we're going to win every time we step on the floor. I can promise you that.
And before we wrap up our Media Day deep dive, I wanted to play a clip from one of the main players you will hear from throughout the season. Now, Owen Larson, you can check out his interview at Media Row Pod on Twitter. You can check out more interviews with players at Media Row Pod on Twitter. That's where you're going to see a lot of what we did on Media Day. But this one stood out to me because with this roster overturn and with this staff turnover as well, brand new head coach, you need those veterans on your team. Whether you have them on the team already, or in this scenario, you bring guys from the transfer portal in that have that veteranship. And one of the players that is going to be a veteran leader, not only on and off on the floor, but also off the floor, is going to be Loyola transfer Jalen Quinn. And he is only one of 3 seniors on this entire roster. There's 7 freshmen and sophomores on this roster. So Jalen Quinn, here it is, his thoughts and how he wears it as a badge of honor, being one of the 3 seniors and what that means to him and this team.
Joe obviously wanted me to be a leader, obviously being an older guy here, and that's something I've definitely tried to take a leap with and kind of run with that. I think me being able to help the younger guys just with communication stuff and just being there for them, honestly, just being the biggest part. And I've obviously had a lot of fun doing it, and that's the role that I want to be in. So it's been great, and Hendo and the staff have been pushing me to be better in that role, and that's what I wanted. So that's one of the reasons I came here to try to be the best vet and leader I can possibly be. So it's been good.
So the season begins here in just a couple of weeks, November 3rd at 3 o'clock. The Field of 68 opening day marathon, Northern Arizona taking on the Drake Bulldogs. Should be a lot of fun. Can't wait to cover this team. And then, of course, we have Drake women's basketball. Their media day is next Thursday, so make sure to follow along all over social media to catch those interviews, as we will also be breaking down that media day that following show on Friday. So a lot of excitement in the Drake athletic department. Football team kicks off at noon against Davidson, trying to win their 3rd straight. We will preview that game more in depth on Friday. And then, of course, on Friday's show, our college football and NFL picks as well. We will see you guys on Friday with a brand new episode of the Media Row Podcast.